All right, hey everyone. This is the demo for Solidworks class Design 3400-01, lesson 17, where we're going to cover some poster render and editing. We've been working with Solidworks and in Keyshot, and today we're going to go over some, I guess, a little bit more of an advanced technique to allow you to adjust things in your rendered imagery after you've sort of finished rendering. Specifically, we're going to be covering using different passes in Keyshot, rendering different passes in Keyshot, and then combining them using Adobe Photoshop to adjust our design. So first things first, if you are working remotely and you haven't already, you might have to VPN into the OSU. Oh man, what's my password? VPN service. And the reason we're doing this, as most of you guys know, is so that Keyshot, which is a floating license, can go and retrieve the license from the server. Looks like I'm connected, so I'm going to go ahead and open up my Keyshot file. Okay, it looks like the license went through, and you guys will be doing this on the hand tool you've already modeled for a couple of the past assignments. So some of you guys were doing like scissors or cat toenail trimmers or bottle openers, that kind of thing. Let's see. There we go. This is my hand tool for this demo. It's a swing line heavy duty stapler. And so first things first, this part of the process usually happens later on once you've already sort of settled in on a set of design geometry and you want to be able to explore like materials and colors and finishes. So definitely further on in the design process, most of the functional design decisions have been made. And for your assignment, you're going to open up your rendering and go ahead and start with I think I have a black one saved, okay. Start with a view of your object that you're going to use to design some new things into this. So I'd pick a sort of a regular view. I double clicked and now it's thinking hard. Okay. There's a lot of parts in this stapler. So let it think for a second. Pick a view that's sort of normal, not a super extreme perspective, because we're mostly just looking at different breakups of color and stuff. Okay, so I'm just going to say this view is what I want. I already like the sort of how the lighting is set up. If you don't like how your lighting is set up, now is a good time to change things. I see some good highlights on the inside of this stapler on the top edges, but I'm not really losing any of that detail. All of these edges look like they're called out pretty nicely too, so I'm okay with this for now. Okay, so first things first, once you have a view that you like, now's a good time. We're going to talk about this camera tab. We're going to actually add a new camera and give it a name, and maybe I'm just going to say this is my assignment 17 view, which is fine. What this does is whenever I'm like moving around my camera in free camera mode, I can kind of find different angles and different views of this object. And whenever I click back on my assignment 17 view, I have the exact camera settings that I left. And if I want, I can actually lock this so that it never changes. This is important because when we're rendering in multiple passes, or essentially rendering this object using several different material settings, we want to make sure everything lines up. So create a camera, and we're going to use that for all of the views in this assignment. Okay, next thing, we're going to actually render this object the way that it is in this view, because we need this view for what we're going to be doing in Photoshop. Let's just go ahead and check some of these settings. My output, I'm going to use a new folder somewhere that I actually expect this thing to go. I'm just going to happen to throw it in my assignment 17 demo folder. That's fine. I want you guys to render at least like 1600 by whatever it's supposed to be. And this number doesn't really matter right now. We're going to have exactly this number of pixels. For this demo, I guess we'll see how long this is going to take. Because I don't have a ton of time to like pre-render these. I'm going to render at a slightly lower resolution for now to see how long it takes. For passes, if this menu isn't open, we can actually knock out our first pass by just checking a button. This clown pass, you'll see what exports here once we actually do the rendering, is super important for allowing us to select different components once we're in Photoshop. Excuse me. So right now, that's all I need to do on this page. Do make sure that you're rendering as a Photoshop file. It will keep nice layers for you. Don't worry about adding layers to Photoshop. We're going to render a bunch of different layers separately for now. In the Options tab, if you're in one of these tabs, make sure you go over to Advanced Control. Make sure Global Illumination Cache is off forever and always. And then the rest of these samples, these settings are probably good enough for this assignment. Number of samples, number of ray bounces. This is not a transparent object, so I can get away with slightly lower numbers. If you're doing a transparent or translucent object, I would bump this up to maybe at least 12 or even like 16. The rest of this stuff is fine for now. And then Q, we're not going to be rendering using the... Oh, you know what? I could actually do that. We're not going to use the Q for now. Okay, so once these are all good to go, I'm going to go ahead and hit render and let this thing churn out. Oh wow, it's going nice and fast. So I might render another one at a slightly higher resolution just so my demo is consistent with what you guys are going to be turning out. I'm going to change my resolution really quick and hit render. Yeah, that wasn't so bad. Hard materials are hard, not transparent materials usually render quite quickly in Keyshot. Okay, so that should be saved, and let's just double check. I'm going to open up that folder, and you'll see, because we had that clown pass checked, I have two different files. So I'm going to hang on to these for now, and we'll come back to them. So we have two different files. Let's go back into Keyshot and work on our other passes. We have a normal rendering pass, we have our clown pass, and now we're going to do two other passes for this thing. The first one that we're going to do is called a clay pass. And if you don't already have a clay model set up, I'll show you how to set one up. We're just going to go into plastic. Actually, you know what? We can do plastic or paint. Paint might even render faster. So under Paint in your Materials tab on the left side, if you don't have your Materials tab open, go to Paint, Matte. There should be like a nice gray matte paint. Excuse me. And we can actually like drag this over to the model and apply it to everything on the model all at once. We want to render this model as if it's just the entire thing is matte gray paint. This is called a clay pass. It's as if this model is made out of like a plain Jane gray clay, and you'll see how we use it in Photoshop afterwards. So that's it. I'm just going to go ahead and hit render again. We don't need another clown pass, so I can uncheck that box and make sure all these settings are exactly the same, and I'm going to hit render. And this one usually renders pretty quick as well, although for some reason it's a little bit slower. The clay pass in this case is something that we can use to bring some volume back into our rendering if for some reason we lost some detail when we added, like, let's say a dark color to our rendering. And I'll show you what I mean by that a little bit. It's also a great material to use for like enhancing some of the lighting or shadow on our object after we've done rendering. It will also be a nice way for us to add some of these like little details that might disappear in like a shiny material. again, this is a clay pass, and hopefully have one rendering. Notice I didn't mess around with the camera settings at all. We want to make sure that this lines up exactly right with the rest of our other renderings, our clown pass and that original rendering in the original materials. Like we're getting pretty close. The next pass that we're going to do once our clay pass finishes rendering is called a chrome pass. And if you couldn't guess, we're going to choose a material. Okay, that looks good. We're going to choose a brand new material. This time we're going to do a metallic, and you could do actually chrome. There should be under metal chrome a not chrome dots. You just want like a plain old chrome pass, not knurled, polished. Chrome polished. Probably what we need. And because my material was all the same, we want to just make sure every single part on here is chrome. And this is what your object would look like if it were all like perfectly mirror finished. We can use this to really enhance some of the like harder edges to our highlights and shadows if we want to bring that stuff back in our rendering. Chrome Pass is also another good preview for if your lighting scheme is really enhancing or maybe not enhancing some of your geometry. Looks like here I can still see a lot of these like highlights and lowlights on my edges, so that's pretty nice. The top of this handle is completely washed out, so I'm not getting a ton of information that in my Chrome Pass, but that's okay too. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit render, make sure my passes or all this stuff hasn't changed. Remember, I don't need a clown pass again here. I'm going to say render. Chrome usually renders pretty quickly too. It's literally just a reflection of the rendering environment and any you can see of this geometry reflected on itself. Okay, that's it. Now you will notice there are a few other passes: depth pass, geometric normal pass. Those are things that I've not really used extensively in my own rendering. We can talk about that at another time. So that's good. I'm going to go ahead and just undo those last two material selections, or maybe just not save what I already had here to get back to my original materials. But I think that's all I need to do in Keyshot. So again, all we did was we set up a camera with a set view that is locked. I can't change the view unless I pick a different camera. We rendered the object in its original materials. Then we changed all of the materials to just a matte gray paint, rendered that, and then we rendered this object as if we're all chrome. So those are our clay, chrome, and clown passes. So let's get out of Keyshot. And now we're going to move into Photoshop. So you should see somewhere 3 renderings plus this funny looking clown pass thing. Go ahead and open up one of those. It doesn't really matter which one you start with. And hopefully you guys all have Photoshop. That's what we use for this. You can do this stuff in Sketchbook Pro as well, but in general, that's not the space that I do this. I don't know what it's talking about. Okay, so there's my first object. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to compile all of those rendering passes into a single view. And maybe to start, I'm going to change the name of this layer to my like normal materials. What do I want to call this? Let's say like materials pass. All right, so let's open, where we go? Let's place embedded one of those other renderings. I gotta go back to where that file folder is. Okay, so we're in 13. I'm gonna place the clown pass, and it should be exactly in the right position because we rendered it with the same settings. So it will ask me to like say okay, and if I hide that layer, should notice that it's not jumping around on me. It looks like everything in this view lines up with the view underneath it. There's our clown pass. I would label that clown or clown pass. Okay, so we have our clown pass, we have our materials pass. Let's go ahead and place another image. Number 14, there's our clay pass. I'm going to have a check mark. Make sure everything looks like it's lining up here. And I'm just using these eyeball icons to hide and show the different layers here. So everything looks like it's lining up. I'm going to type in clay pass. Next, I'm going to place our final one, which is our chrome pass. Chrome pass. All right. I should have all of these in the same, all of these layers in the same file. Okay. Usually I like to throw the clown pass on top, and I'm just going to save this. Right now it's saved as heavy duty stapler 13.psd. You might want to give it a name, like save it as stapler passes, something like that, just so you know that this is your working file for this rendering. So save, okay. Okay, now that we have our passes, what are we going to use them for? So there are a couple different things that we can do. Normally, these are all tools that we're going to use by copying them and layering different sections of them on top of one another. So in general, before we start using any of these layers, I'm going to duplicate by like clicking one of these layers and dragging it down to this like new layer icon. See how it made a copy of this materials pass? That's the one that I want to modify. That way, if I really mess this one up, I always have this other one ready to start over if I need to. So, all right, first things first, let's talk about how we're going to use this clown pass. So again, I'm going to just hide my materials pass copy that I'm going to be editing and look at my clown pass. This clown pass highlighted every single object in a color, a very plain color. And the cool thing about that is in Photoshop, I can actually select a color range like so. So let's say I wanted to change something about these metallic areas on my stapler. All I got to do is click this like weird green color that Keyshot assigned to it, and say, okay. And notice I have a selection now. I'm going to hide my clown pass layer and show my new layer that I want to edit. And you can see how those parts are actually highlighted. And that is a super powerful tool for a couple different reasons. One of those reasons would be, let's say I wanted to change the color of those pieces. I could create a brand new layer, and while this is selected, I can do anything I want in this layer, and it will only happen inside this selection. So let's say I wanted to change the color of those metallic parts to red for some reason. Let's find like a red-orange color. I can use a brush tool and that orange color that I'm on and actually just paint that in. And notice how I'm painting like all over the place, but it's only staying inside that selected area. Right. Now, right now it's just sort of a flat color. The clown pass is a great tool for selecting an area without having to go in and like make your own paths. But there's still some other things that you can do. So let's say, for example, we wanted to change the color of these components to orange. We used clown pass to select those components. And after I've painted them orange, I'm going to change the type of this layer, which I might actually write in like orange color. I'm going to change the type of this layer to something like, I think even color would work, color. And you'll notice, and well, I guess I still have all of this stuff selected. If you want to get rid of that selection, you can Control D to deselect that object. I think you can also go up to select and then deselect. And you'll see that my layer here is now coloring those components orange. And it's a really fast way to make small modifications to your design. All right, let's try another thing that we can do. Let's say I wanted to change the, I don't know, what other things do we have on my clown pass? I'm going to keep my clown pass on top because it's easier just to see. I'm going to go back up to select and pick a color range. And for some reason, I have a feeling that because the materials in Keyshot were the same for all of these components, they all came out this purple color. Yeah. So let's look at the trigger right now. The trigger and these little like screw fastener kind of things. I'm going to select those, say OK, and hide my clown pass and make a brand new layer. And what are we going to do with these guys? Let's say we're going to, we could add a texture. We could change their color. You know what? Why don't we use one of the other passes that we created? So I'm going to actually use my Chrome pass to make these objects shinier. All right, and I'll show you what I mean here. So before I use this Chrome pass, I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to drag that layer down so I have a copy of my Chrome pass. I'm going to bring it on top of the other visible layers that I have, and let's turn on its visibility. Okay, there it is. Now, another thing you can do in Keyshot is mask. And all you need to mask an area, or essentially like hide everything that isn't inside a selection, is you need to have something selected, which is what we did with our clown pass. And on this layer with this Chrome pass copy selected, I can use the mask tool. And it will take anything that I have selected and turn it into a mask. And you'll see there's this little link over here. If I turn the mask, oops, oh, weird. Let me get out of that. So I can turn off that layer mask by right-clicking on it and see, like, I see the entire Chrome pass that we were using. If I turn that back on, it kind of just masks out all of the areas that weren't selected. So if I turn off and on the whole layer, see how I changed all of those components to something that's like bright and shiny that looks exactly like my Chrome pass. Another really cool thing that you can do with this is, like any layer in Photoshop, you can change its opacity. So let's say I wanted to make all of those fasteners a little bit brighter, but not super, super bright. I can actually kind of scale up and down the effect of my Chrome pass on top of my existing stapler. So in this instance, we used a clown pass to select these components, the fasteners and the, it's not really a trigger, this area inside the stapler, duplicated our Chrome pass, and then combined those two things to increase the shininess of some of the components on our design. Pretty cool. Okay, so there are a couple other things that we can do. I'll show you something you can do with a clay pass. So as a reminder, I'm just going to copy my clay pass, move it up on top of everything else that I'm already working on, and let's turn it on so we know what we're looking at. So this is my clay pass. Now let's say this black object, maybe it's a little bit underexposed, or I want to try and get some more definition in some of these like embossed, or I guess debossed words. I can actually turn on my clay pass and change its type to something else. So let's change it to, where are we here? An overlay. And then let's turn it on and off a couple times, and you can kind of see what happens. Now, an overlay will kind of take all of the highlights in a layer and make anything underneath it a little bit brighter, and take all of the shadows on a certain layer in our clay pass and make everything underneath it a little bit darker. In general, this will make an object look a little bit more shiny. It'll add a little more contrast. And because it's using the exact geometry that we rendered it with, it should apply everything exactly where it's supposed to. So You can kind of see the difference here. Now notice it's also applying to the shadow on the ground, and let's say I didn't want that to happen. I could go to my clown pass, select a color range, and this time I'm going to pick the background. I'm going to pick the entire background, say OK, close my clown pass, go back to my clay pass, and then I only want my clay pass to work its magic on the object and not the background. I can actually say invert the selection. So now I'm selecting all of the stapler and not the background, and apply that as a mask. So you can see now, not changing anything to the background, but it is adding some more definition. My clay pass is adding more definition to my stapler object as a whole. Pretty cool, right? All right, so we're going to try one other thing here. And for this, I actually am going to go back into Keyshot. Let's open this guy back up again. And I wanted to kind of change the texture on some of the bigger components on my stapler. And for one reason or another, my model, like Keyshot, rendered everything as sort of the same color. So let's see if we can fix that. All right, I think it's still opening. Let's try. There we go. Okay, so let's make sure I'm still looking at. Oh, and I didn't save that camera view. Oh man, that's gonna really screw things up. Shoot. I didn't save. Normally, that camera view that we had over here would show up. Okay, darn. Well, let's see if we can do something with this anyway. So in order to get a clown pass that gave me separate materials for all of this stuff, I think I can probably just right-click on the part and say unlink all materials. And we'll just do a quick rendering. Yeah, it didn't save any of my settings. Make sure you guys save before you close your Keyshot file. Do a clown pass. Make sure I put it in the right folder. Back into transfer. OSU stuff. Solidworks class 17 demo. Yep. And make sure, yep, illumination cache is not on. Render. Gonna do its thing. And what I'm hoping for is by unlinking all of those materials, I should get a clown pass that has different colors for each of these components. Let's see. Actually, it might finish the clown pass. No, it's still working. All right, I know we've gone through a few different things here and it was kind of quick. I want you guys to feel free to like rewind this video and double check how we're using this clown pass to select different areas on our design to then apply other effects, whether it's color or whether it's using the clay pass as a modification layer like we did here to make, I guess, to give a little bit more definition to the volume of our object. And we'll do something, I guess we use the chrome pass in sort of a similar way to brighten up the highlights and shadows on a few of these different objects or components. All right, Keyshot, how we doing? Like it's good. I'm going to close out of here and discard my changes. So I can already tell the view is a little bit different here, but yeah, okay. Now when we look at this clown pass, see how we have a different color on each one of these components. That's where the real power comes in with a clown pass. We could actually select the entire front of this object and change its color or add a texture or make it shiny or something like that. So for the sake of showing you one more modification in this demo, I'm actually going to do it by hand. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and use the path tool, create my own selection. So there's a tool over here, that's the pen tool, and I'm going to actually go through and select, add a bunch of points, and select what is essentially just the front of this stapler. This always takes a little bit of time, and this, I guess, will actually show you a really good example for why the Clown Pass is such a powerful tool. You don't actually have to use a pen tool to make your selections. And I'm doing this with the mouse, and my mouse hand is kind of stupid. If you guys aren't familiar with playing around with this pen tool, this is also a super important tool in Adobe Illustrator. Definitely find an excuse to play around with the pen tool. You make pretty much any shape in the world with a combination of points and Bezier curves like this pen tool uses. And this is just a rough outline for now for this demo. Okay, so there's my pen tool pathed outline of the front of this guy. I can actually change this into a selection. Actually, if I right click and just say make a selection. Okay, so there's my selection. That's the kind of selection I'd be able to get from my Clown Pass if that front was actually a different color. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'll just start by applying this mask to the layer. All right, so for now, and that way if I need that selection again, I can actually hold Control and pick one of these layers to get exactly that selection then. It's kind of nice. I can also like subtract things. Like right now, if I wanted to take this selection and get rid of this shiny object here, I know that see how it's selected was a selection that I created earlier from this Chrome Pass. So if I Control click to select this front of the object, and then I hold Control and Alt, notice my mouse has a little minus next to it. While I'm holding all of those buttons, I can click this mask here on the other layer, and it will subtract my previous selection from my current selection. It's great. So I'm actually gonna delete that layer mask and create a new one with the selection that I have right now. Okay, so let's say for some reason I wanted to add a wood texture to the front of this guy. So let's bring in a wood texture. Let's place image. I have this ash file right here. Okay. I might scale it down just a little bit. There we go. Okay. I can, again, holding Control and clicking that mask that I kind of created and saved, I can apply that same mask to this layer and then use one of the many different layer blending options up here to apply a wood texture to the front of this design. And in this case, it gets me pretty close to what this object would look like with like a wooden front without having to go back and re-render in Keyshot, which is pretty cool. If overlay didn't do it for you, you can try a couple of these other, these other ways of applying a texture, and you might find that one gives you a better result. And there might be another thing that you want to do, like let's say I wanted this to look more like cherry wood. I could create a brand new layer, use that same mask by Control clicking the mask on my previous layer, add a brand new mask, and then come in here with like a, I don't know, a dark red color, use a fill tool or a brush tool. Where's my fill tool? It's under here. Yeah. Let's fill in this layer, change it to color. Hue. Anyway, you see what I'm saying. So there are a lot of different things you can kind of do in Photoshop. We're really only touching the surface here. But the biggest advantage of of doing these render passes is that you have a great set of highlights and shadows and things that you can sort of tweak after the fact using your Chrome Pass, Play Pass, and your Clown Pass to make selections. So what I'm hoping you guys do for this assignment is you're going to render your hand tool, and then you're going to render your hand tool in all of these different passes, and then let's look at this. And then you're going to tweak your rendering, changing at least 2 colors and 2 materials. So what eventually I want to see and what you're going to actually submit is you're going to submit your original rendering. So you're going to just like save this original rendering as a JPEG, and then you're going to, after you make all your adjustments, submit the new rendering that you did with whatever modification you made using your Photoshop rendering passes. All right, I hope that is helpful for you guys. There are a lot of other ways that we can use Chrome, Clay, and Clown passes, and we will get into that more and more as we go through the rest of this semester and next semester in Keyshot. So thanks for listening.